Well, hello there. Welcome back to my channel. I've been going through a little bit of a YouTube renaissance lately, making a lot more videos, and I'll probably be doing that for a little bit. The subject, for a while at least, will probably largely be society and law and government and politics and that kind of stuff, culture, rather than the subjects that I started this channel with, which were religion and science. So if you only came for the religion and the science, or the religion or the science, and now I'm getting into other things that you aren't interested in, then I thank you for having been here for those subjects. On the other hand, if you're interested in listening to some of the stuff that I have here, as I'm talking about culture and politics and all those things, then please feel free to stick around, and I will be glad to have you. So what I wanted to talk about today was Alex Jones and some related subjects. And I'm going to have to kind of be careful here because I don't know what all of the verboten topics are, words that I'm not allowed to say, that YouTube will pick up on and say, no, you cannot talk about that. So I'm going to have to be a little bit careful, but I hope you will stick with me. It's going to be a little bit of a longer one. So Alex Jones, you know who that is, and you know why I'm talking about it. There's been recent news. There was a massive, almost $50 million judgment, including 40-something million in punitive damages. Punitive damages mean like punishment damages. The jury said, hey, Jones, we think what you did was so terrible that we are going to make you pay through the nose. And I have some very conflicted feelings on this. For one, I am a father, and thinking about those people who lost their children, just the loss of children, I don't know how you go on from that. I don't know how you lose your children and 10 years later, people do it, I don't know how. And then to have lost your children and then to have somebody with millions of followers getting online and on the radio and wherever else and saying that you are a crisis actor. I feel so bad for all of the children that died, obviously, but in a current way, I feel bad for all the parents that have had to live with that. And for those now that are getting some justice and having, the guy who said those things about them and the guy who employed other people who said those things about them, having that guy be told, no, now you're going to pay for it. I feel good for those people for what they've had to live through. At the same time, I think and there are going to be some people who want to yell at me for saying this, I think the destruction of Alex Jones is a very bad thing for society. I think it's a very bad thing for the United States and for Western society as a whole. I know, and if you want to yell at me, please feel free to do so. But if you can hold on to it, if you can just interlock your fingers a little bit so that they're not typing yet, and actually listen to the rest of my video and understand why I'm saying that. I hope you will do that. Okay, you've started typing, I can tell, but please at least come back and listen to the rest so you'll know why you were yelling at me. Anyway, I think it's a bad thing for society that Alex Jones's media, whatever, we can call it an empire. I don't think it really rises to the level of an empire, but his little mini media empire is being potentially completely destroyed beyond the point of no return. I think it's a bad thing, and I'll tell you why. Now, Alex Jones himself, I don't know how he started out. I think he was probably just a guy who saw things and thought, I want to share this with people. And maybe he liked the attention. He probably did like the attention he got, but maybe there were also actual, more honest motives of telling the news and telling people about the things that were true or that he believed were true and they didn't know about. And in some cases, if you have actually followed the stuff that Alex Jones has produced over the years, in some cases, some of that has actually turned out to be true. He has made some actual journalistic revelations of things. He's also made a lot of revelations of nonsense. He has said that essentially everything that happens, especially if it is bad, everything that happens that is bad on a large scale is a conspiracy. Things that happen by accident, they're conspiracies. Things that criminals do that have a large impact, those are conspiracies. And it's all part of this big, grand plan. And I don't know how much of it is just that he believes all of that. That's what he claims. That he's been so warped by looking at the conspiracies that have actually happened and the lies about them that he thinks everything is a conspiracy. And that may be true. I think it's also true that he kind of doesn't care. He wants to tell people about conspiracies because that's what they come for. He has a following of millions of people. People come and they listen to his conspiracies, and probably in a lot of cases, the crazier the conspiracy, the more they eat it up. And when they're eating up his conspiracies, they also eat up his snake oil. Yes, Alex Jones is a snake oil salesman. He sells conspiracies, sometimes real conspiracies, sometimes made-up conspiracy, along with snake oil, and it has made him very rich. Now, some of the conspiracies that he has always talked about are any kind of mass shootings, including Sandy Hook. And sometimes he has created victims by doing that. However, I would also like to point out that the point at which he started to pay for his mistakes was not back shortly after Sandy Hook. It was actually a number of years after Sandy Hook, when he was kind of in a coordinated fashion kicked off of all the major social media programs, social media outlets, I should say, when he lost his ability to take payments by normal credit card means and whatever else, and all that stuff that initially happened, and when the lawsuits started coming in, that was not right after he did that with Sandy Hook. It was not even after, essentially the end of his droning on about Sandy Hook. He had stopped. He had, I think, moved on. And it was after, apparently, he had assisted in getting Donald Trump elected. I don't know exactly how much of an influence he had. I know he became a big jockey for Donald Trump and had millions of viewers. I have watched some Alex Jones over the years. I have never been a loyal follower, so I don't know all the ins and outs. But I know that I have heard enough to kind of have an idea of the sorts of information that he was purveying. Good, bad, and ugly. So yeah, I think the main reason for what has been happening to him is because of politics. And because he became a source of information for people. Whether that information was good, bad, or other, it was different than what they were hearing through mainline channels, established media. And I think the established media didn't really like it. Now, some of you may at this point say, okay, so you have admitted that Alex Jones spews nonsense. Even if some of what he says is also true, the nonsense, the dangerous nonsense, the poison that he spews should mean that any useful information he provides is also worthless. And who cares if he is completely deplatformed so that he can only talk to himself in the shower? Well, to understand, these are not things that Alex Jones said, but they are media lies. And I'm going to have to be very careful here because one of them especially is extremely... I'm getting into a tinderbox by reading this. but I am going to read these. The first one is potentially going to upset a lot of people. So, a news report. In 2014, Officer Darren Wilson shot an innocent teenager, Michael Brown, in the back repeatedly as Brown was running away with his hands up, crying, "Please don't shoot me." That story was not only told immediately in a fog of war kind of situation, but it continued to be told by the media for months and even years after substantial evidence had come out to show that that story wasn't true. That story was not true. But many people still believe that it is. That story, in fact, has contributed to a lot of the riots, some of them deadly riots, that we've seen over the last several years, because the media kept telling a story that wasn't true. All right, in 2020, this is a similar story. In 2020, white supremacist and militia member Kyle Rittenhouse opened fire with his AR-15 into a crowd of unsuspecting onlookers, killing 2 loving innocent men and injuring a third. Those innocent men were trying to disarm him to protect the crowd, which was being assaulted by this crazed gunman. Now we know about that. Now, on the night that happened, I heard about it the night that it happened. I was obviously not there. I was at home in my living room. And I heard about that, and I started searching online. And that very night, I found video. I found video from multiple angles. There was professional grade video by a reporter who had embedded himself, a freelance reporter who had embedded himself in the crowd. There were people who recorded on cell phones. By the time I found it, which was, I think, just a few hours after it had happened, some people had even been taking that video and taking screenshots of individual things that had happened to show how it had progressed. It was that night. Yet, for at least weeks after that, you heard official news reports using descriptions like, "I am not kidding," "white supremacist militia member," opening fire on a crowd of innocent and peaceful protesters or onlookers. They actually used this language. It's true. Even after the trial, when he was found not guilty, there were still people saying, well, yes, but he was still. The evidence is there. Those reporters, those pundits, everybody involved in telling that story either knew or should have known what they were saying was false. They were lying. All right, during the 2016 election, we were informed that Donald Trump was an asset for Russia's Vladimir Putin. Putin purportedly had this video of him engaging in various fetish activities with prostitutes and had used this to compromise him. And he was now in the White House as a Russian agent. I'll admit, at the time I was fooled, at least partially, by this one. We know how that turned out. There are still people who hold on to that. Wasn't true. And they should have known it wasn't true at the time. All right, and the fourth and final one that I'm going to give is the Biden laptop. That was clearly, unquestionably Russian disinformation. We were told that by how many different news sources and a bunch of former intelligence officers, and we were just, oh man, it was all Russian disinformation. And if you were to go around talking about that like it was a real thing, then you were doing the bidding of Vladimir Putin. Now, some of these stories have had potentially deadly effects. Like we talked about riots resulting from a couple of these. And there were other stories that were also false and led to rioting. And the story during the election, that the 2016 election of Donald Trump being an asset, that was obviously intended to affect the election. And the story of Biden's laptop, which I'm not sure whether those reporters knew that it was true. But one thing I can tell you is that they didn't actually care. There wasn't a lot of effort going on to try to find out if it was true. Yes, there were ways they could have done that. There were ways they could have investigated it that they did not. And the focus tended to be on, well, first they ignored it. And then once they stopped ignoring it, then it was just to squash it and make it go away until after the election. Mainstream media, established media that has been around since long before I was born in some cases. Yes, you can get useful information. And you can also get complete garbage. What do you do with that? Now, this is the same media that is at least somewhat behind trying to get rid of Alex Jones. And as it turns out, people who are like Alex Jones. Now, this is ironic. It is a great irony. I'm going to say it, though. It is true. You can yell at me about it if you would like to. Please just head down to the comments and tell me what you think. There is a conspiracy. There's a conspiracy that involves lots of different organizations, but a couple of the kinds of things that a couple of the things that it involves are the news media, which have told these kinds of lies, and social media. So we know that Alex Jones was kicked off of social media. We also know, going back to some of these stories, like, for example, the Biden laptop. Oh, yeah, when that was first reported in a right-leaning newspaper, it was eliminated from social media. You couldn't link to it. Yeah, so that was handled by social media. And, yeah, what about Kyle Rittenhouse? You know, shortly after Rittenhouse was arrested, there was an attempt by his family to have a legal fund for him. And that was shut down by financial agencies. You could not donate to a legal fund for Kyle Rittenhouse. You also, you couldn't post video not related to the shootings. On Facebook, I believe it was Facebook, you could not post video from earlier that night where Rittenhouse, who had with him a first aid kit, was providing some first aid for individuals, for peaceful protesters who had been either shot by rubber bullets or hit with tear gas or maybe both, something like that. He was providing first aid, and there were some people who had this video and tried to upload it to, I believe it was Facebook, and it was removed. You were not allowed to show any other side to Kyle Rittenhouse. So, yeah, there is a conspiracy going on there. We need other sides to that. Now, join in with everything else that's been going on. Now we have the courts. And I would point you to, I do not have the video. I'm not going to play the video. I want to stay as much out of trouble with this as I can because I would like this video to stay up. But there is a snippet from the plaintiff's case, the complainant, the family, from the family's case against Jones, in which the family's attorney said, don't just think of this as being, trying to pay retribution to the family, to make them whole or whatever, but make sure this is something that Alex Jones can't come back from. Make sure this hits him so hard, or however he said it, that he cannot rebuild from this. Take that much money from him. Now, the courts have been added to that. Yes, It is about Alex Jones, who, at least in some cases, is definitely, without question, a bad actor. But there are so many other people now. Less of a reach individually than Alex Jones at least once had. I don't know what has happened with his reach in recent years, but at one time he was, I think, the biggest in alternative media. Now there's Daily Wire and The Blaze, and I don't know, there's some others. There's smaller ones. But yeah, if those get too prominent, if they start saying things that are too troublesome, they start getting the wrong people elected. And that's what Jones did. A lot of this started yes, the reason given is because of what he said about the families and the events going along with the Sandy Hook massacre. But what he really did was help to get the wrong guy elected president. And that's a scary thing. And this video is not about supporting someone for politics. So if you want to come on and say it's because I support this person or that person, that is not true. I support access to information and opinions, and that means good information and bad information and correct opinions and incorrect opinions, because our only hope is really to have as much as possible and to be as savvy and as critical thinking with it as possible. Because there's still going to be incorrect information. But if we're only getting it from the sources that are included in this conspiracy, then we have no way. On the night of the Kenosha shootings, if nobody had been able to put out the video, if it hadn't been out there for anybody who actually wanted to find it, then all we would have had would have been those media outlets that were saying, hey, this guy is a bad actor who was killing innocent people unprovoked. So there you go, long video, but anyway, feel free to tell me what you want, say what you like down below, and thanks for being here. Until next time.